the computer, because if TT breaks down and I drop out, the recording will still go on, I think. So, so the people in Echuca, have you done some fundraising, or you've actually sent some money over, have you, to ILAO?
We've sent it through to Chris Adams, Helen.
Oh, yes.
That's just from our group, but we have started a fundraising. We've put out some information asking people to give donations to the group.
Oh, yes.
So hopefully we will be able to send some more across to Chris.
Because there's so many of them now, these GoFundMe things and others.
Yeah, no, well, we donated directly to the group. We don't like the GoFundMe ones.
And over cash, yes. Well, that's
yes.
The best idea. I just realised I didn't comb my hair before I got onto this Zoom meeting. I'm in my kitchen, as you see.
Yeah.
Now, wow, you've got a nice painting behind you on the wall there. Are you at home? Oh, in your office?
I am borrowing the Embassy of the Order of Malta space, because here I have better internet compared to my office.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, that's good. So they're available there. They let you use it. So you shouldn't drop out at all. You should have a good. I'm using a TT hotspot here, so.
I hope so. I've been doing voluntary works for the Embassy of the Order of Malta, so.
Oh, right.
They allow me to use the space when I need to.
All right. Now, do they have a medical centre? Have they been giving out the vaccinations?
Yes, they have a clinic that provide free health services, right. But I'm not sure. Pretty much they already provide vaccine for their staff, but I'm not sure if they provide for the general public.
Right, because why I mentioned that is because I got the vaccine yesterday through the Red Cross, because the Red Cross was given a whole lot of doses of vaccine for their volunteers, and they had a big session vaccinating their staff, volunteers, committee members, etc., and they had some left over. So Tracy got some of the Malay who were over 70 to get the vaccine yesterday. So I had it yesterday, and all their volunteers have been vaccinated. So, so I wondered if.
How do you feel so far after the vaccines?
Not bad at all. No, look, I'm just feeling quite okay. It hasn't affected me now. Margaret also had, my sister Margaret, who's in that corner, she also had the vaccine yesterday by chance, by a strange coincidence.
Yeah, in Echuca.
In Echuca, Victoria, between New South Wales and Victoria. Do you know Australia at all?
Yeah. I spent 5 years in Brisbane.
Oh, Brisbane. Ah, right.
Yes, I went to Naji College, high school.
Oh, really? Oh, yes, I've heard of that. That's a very good school. Yes. Now, I think some people have come into the waiting room. Yes. Oh, here's Gawain. Oh, here, good. And here is Moira, somebody from Sydney and somebody from Melbourne. So this is the people from Dili are a bit slow on the uptake, but there are people coming from Dili. And, so now, good to see you, Gawain. And who else came in? Oh, Moira.
Hey, Helen, how are you going?
Yes, Moira, good to see you. Yes, Moira's a regular attender of this group. Seem to be more, apart from Rob Williams, who I think's been to all of them, probably the most regular attender. But you know, and the topics have sort of morphed out of each other a bit. It started being a general discussion on researchers in Dili who wanted to talk about their own research, and a couple of them were about food and food aid and food security, not food aid, but food security. And Deborah, I don't know whether you know Deborah Judge from Western Australia. She's a physical anthropologist, and she does research on the impact of eating on kids' size, you know, measures them and what it observes what they eat and that sort of thing. And then we had Gianna Profumo from Darwin speaking about her big research on food security, you know, which is all about actually getting certain amount of calories into everybody. But some of the participants were a bit surprised they didn't seem to pay a lot of attention to nutritional values of the food. Oh, here's Berta now. Berta's been doing some very good stuff in Dili with. Now, has she come in? Berta, are you there? Oh. So as it happens, the day we were going to discuss food aid, we were going to discuss something like Cesta Basica, which is the government's food program for the poor. And then the floods came on, and talking about food aid turned out to be a very different sort of food aid. It was the emergency stuff that people were rushing around doing. So Berta, good to see you.
It's all quiet.
Yeah.
It's probably the internet.
I think it might be.
Yeah, internet in Timor is a little bit challenging. So.
And it won't be any easier after the storms.
Imagine it.
Yeah. We had quite a lot of down telephone and internet down over our recent rain and storms as well, not to mention the bushfires last year. It was a lot. Yeah.
Oh my.
We've lost Helen now.
So what Helen does is she goes off and then she reconnects.
All right.
And to get it working again, because sometimes you can't just wait. Yeah.
She's using a hotspot too, which wouldn't be very consistent.
Ah, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Look,
yeah, everyone is using hotspot.
And on other sessions, the reception has been pretty good. I mean, it's dropped in and out for little bits, but not much. I'm in Sydney. In Sydney. Where's everybody else? Is everybody else in Timor, in Dili or somewhere?
No, I'm in Echuca on the Murray River.
Oh yeah, I've been to Echuca. Yeah, lovely.
And we're in Rochester, which is just south of Echuca.
Ah, right. Excellent.
Yeah, and I'm in Melbourne, but you haven't been up to sort of Timor way for a little while. I was actually in New South Wales just last week, which was a major relief. It was the first time after a year and a half.
Wow, that would have been an adventure.
It was great.
Yeah, I did a few sessions in regional New South Wales. I went to Orange and Coonamble, which was like the first time in a year and a half that it was amazing, really. Although I noticed with lots of the people I do stuff with, mainly local councils, some of them are saying, oh, it's really good. We like doing it remotely with Zoom. We don't have to get on a plane, come down to Sydney, book into a hotel.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah. So I think we'll be doing a bit of a mix. Yeah.
Well, being the school holidays, our town is absolutely chock-a-block full of tourists.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's lovely. So tourism is now our biggest industry. It used to be agriculture, but now it's tourism. So 2020 was very quiet. So it's good to have them all in town now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, but it's because I've had a couple of, we were organizing some fundraising here around my area in Sydney, which is Inner West.
Yep.
And it's none of us have been able to go over to Timor for, this is we couldn't go last year and we won't be able to go this year.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Helen hasn't left Dili since February 2020.
Yeah, that'd be
And
right.
she usually, you know, goes overseas a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
New York or London or somewhere.
Yeah.
To do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's just stayed put.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all stuck. And this topic was meant to be, are we focusing, because I'm not quite with it, are we focusing still on the idea of nutrition in the educational context, mainly linked to schools or people in the community who can link into it? Is that still the idea?
I'm pretty sure that is. That's what Helen's been working on with her. She's writing secondary curriculum,
Right.
10s, 11s and 12s with Ego Lemos. So, yeah, I think that's what Permatil want to do. Yeah.
Yes, Permatil. Yeah, and that's one of the groups that we're fundraising for here. We're running concerts and a few things, yeah, to do that. Yeah.
So are you in a East Timor friendship group?
Yes, Friends of Maliana.
Okay.
So I don't spend a lot of time in Dili. I kind of just pop in and out of there when I'm, you know, coming and going, if you like, to back to Darwin. Yeah.
Well, Robin, Robin and I are in the Campaspe East Timor Association of Friendship, and Robin goes to Dili every year. She goes to Inaro every year.
Inaro, yes, yeah.
We started off going to Mabisi because Noel was in Rotary, and we were involved with building projects in Mabisi.
Oh, here we go.
Excellent. And there's the Blue Mountains group. They go to Hatabliko.
Yes.
Yeah, they're very active there.
Well, apparently there's 40 friendship groups in Australia.
About that, that's right. And they've got their, you know, well, I haven't posted there now for a little bit. I should do something. I tend to stay a little bit local. Yes, there is, and there's a Facebook page, and some updates have come through recently. Most of the activity, as I understand it, historically has been in Victoria. Our group was first set up. I didn't know anything about the friendship stuff at the time. I just got approached in Sydney by Abel Guterres, who's retired now, and he said, "Can we do a community to community?" And that's when we started. That was in 2000.
All right.
Yeah. I might have been 2001. Anyway.
In Victoria, I think Victoria University was pretty, as part of the development in Victoria, because they had Timorese students come directly to the uni to work there. And Helen was a professor at Victorian University.
Yeah. We have 2 schools. We've like got a sort of a mix of people in the group. So we support a library in the community centre, and the schools then are linked to, one is a senior high and the other a primary. So I've been in contact with them about this idea. And actually the library and the community centre, they said, yeah, we know people who are quite good in the community doing things about nutrition, because it's an agricultural area up there.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to see where it might go. Yeah.
Now, is everybody here?
Oh, there you are. Sorry.
Yes, I've come back and I've just admitted 2 people, but I'm not sure whether everyone who first came in is still here.
Yep,
We're all here.
Right. Anyway, yes, look, we might. Oh, what's happened to Berta?
Well, actually, now that you mention it, I
yes.
can't.
Berta is one of the people I asked to say a few words early in the piece, but Joao is ready, so we might ask you to start giving us some background and some talk about some of your arguments you put forward in your article, because although we're talking about food, we're talking about systems, and food inevitably must link in with transport, moving money around inside the country, energy, cooking, all of these things. So we need to look at it in a very multifaceted way. So this all does come in on Dili as a centre where decisions are made. So we might ask you now to lead us in some discussion about your thoughts. I mean, about, you know, what's been happening over the last few weeks, 2 weeks, and what lessons we can learn from it. So, Joao.
Yes.
There you are.
And I'll let people in as they come. And if
All
you
right,
could,
can everyone?
Yep, we can hear you.
I think yes.
All right.
We can hear you.
And if you could tell us a little bit about your role too, your current work, because I'm not quite clear about that. But I know you are involved with
All right.
planning.
Anyway, I hope everyone is well. Greeting from warm Dili.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. By the way, my educational background is urban planning, and I've been working. Yes, I've been working with Ministry of Planning, but mostly managing the infrastructure fund for the last 4 years.
Oh.
Yes. So, but anyway, all the articles and publications are as me as a researcher.
I thought so. Yes.
And anyway, just a little bit of background about the article. I think we are here aware of the article that I released recently, and I think
in the
it was a pity. Hello?
I was just saying your article was published in the Lowy Interpreter in Australia.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. And it's on our LinkedIn.
That's right. Mostly. That's right. And I think it's a pity that we bring this issue, urban planning, up after such event. And,
Yes.
But anyway, it's better late than never. Yes.
Right.
So just to give us background about the current situation, I think the flood had been going on for almost a week throughout the country. But of course, Dili was hit hardest because of density, and so a lot of casualties and of infrastructure damage. So far, it's reported that 29 deaths, 13 are missing, and about 25,000 households are affected by the flood, and 46% are in Dili of these 25,000 households, and about 12,000 people are displaced. In terms of infrastructure, preliminary data, at least nationwide, at least 200 million worth of damage. And in Dili alone, it's about 100 million worth of damage for the infrastructure. And I hope that Berta is here, because it is most of the immediate response come from the solidarity movement, volunteers, civil society organizations, and NGOs, providing the humanitarian support that
That's right.
much very needed by the affected populations. Of course, the government does its part. So government has identified that at least 50,000 families throughout the country needs much support. And in their estimation, they need at least 53 millions for support such as food, reconstruction materials, and all the logistics that they need to support the affected families. And the government also has formed a partnership with development partners, and now they are working on the action, like immediate actions, and then what to do in the medium and long term. So they are currently working on it. Anyway, the reason I wrote that article is because I think so far government has taken mostly a reactive approach in terms of resolving this flood event. Mostly just after the flood, they said, let's dredge out the sediment from the river, remove the mud from the houses, repair the retaining walls along the rivers, and I think this is not sustainable and not practical over the long terms. And I think by understanding the underlying causes from the perspective of urban planning, that and try to minimize at least the impacts of this flood, we discuss about sedimentation. So far, if you go through the Malua River, the bridge, the gap between the bridge and the riverbed is about 20 centimeters. That means that there is no gap at all. The rate of sedimentation is so high. So we need to address that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes
also,
sense. Yeah.
And also the waste. The waste mostly from the residents, from the people. It clogged the rivers and the waterways. We need to address that.
Yeah.
And also the poor drainage system.
Yeah.
So because remember the central areas such as Kaikoli, they used to be swamp. So they are able to accommodate all this excess surface water runoff, but now they are not able to. And without proper drainage system, water cannot get out to the lowland areas. So somehow they create their own flood and affect the houses inside in the lowland areas.
Yeah.
And also all these settlements along the riverbanks. I think government needs to address that, because that heightened the impacts of the flood and damage that flood caused to the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so what have been done is that we propose, at least from the urban planning perspective, to organize the space. Means what? So you start to create a space where it is safe for people to live. And that means reorganizing the fringe urban areas such as Dare and Hera. Government needs to start to create a space for people to live there. And this is giving a way to resettle the people along the river.
So are you saying move
up the mountain?
Move them a bit further up, particularly out?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Because there is a regulation that you cannot live 50 meters from the edge of the river.
You mean that exists already,
Ah.
that legally people are not?
Already. Yeah,
Okay.
it already exists.
Right.
But it's just not reinforced. And we also propose that when we start to organize this space, it has to ensure accessibility to key services. And also we
Yeah.
promote that there has to be also interconnectivity, especially for people to engage in economic activities, access to market, that is very essential.
Yeah.
And as you know, if we are not careful in managing the space in Dili, it has its own consequences in terms of somehow it creates this segregation between all this space that all these settlements that are very poorly organized. There is no access to water, there is no road, there is no way for the government to ensure that waste management system. So we need to address that. Now, so far, government already has an urban plan document for development of city Dili, for development of Dili, but it has not been implemented. I think two reasons. The first, there is somehow a misconception that implementation of urban planning is a quick process, and I think so far government the mindset of government is that it's still top-down approach, right? So it means government develop this urban plan and then just implement it. And I think that is already an outdated concept. So what government needs to do is, one, start to develop a proper concept of urban planning. And this has to be done through data collection and analysis, and also consultation with all the stakeholders, especially the community. I think because the use of space, use of land, and how community live their life is very important in terms of creating more sustainable urban development. And two, I think we don't have clear implementation framework, which means there is no legal framework, no law to implement this urban plan. So there is how to proceed, how to start. It is a little bit problematic for the government, and that is why, and that is why I think there is the need to have a pilot project. That so you need to start somewhere, so that you can use that to fine tune the concept and how to engage with all the stakeholders, and can improve. And I also think that government need to change the way they think about resolving urban issues. So far, we only resolve problems they occur. Let's say there is a land problem in Komoro, you go and resolve that. But we forget that the city will expand in the future. So if you don't start organize your urban fringe, the outer areas, you have a problem, because suddenly all this movement of people from the rural areas to Dili, of course, to find employment, for education, they start to live even in the hilly areas, in Dare, in Komoro, and they are not organized. They don't have connection to water, they don't have connection to electricity, and these are risk. This is risk to formation of slums, and I think this is what I fear most as an urban planner. This is why I think it's timely to discuss about the importance of urban planning.
I mean, arguably, this current crisis and it is terrible, but it would be an opportunity to say, we need to do something now, but we need to do it in a proper way, if you like, because there are many people who need to be moved to safer places. Now, I've already had conversations with some people in Dili who are saying, oh, we'll rebuild our house, but all we'll do is we'll put it up on stilts so it doesn't, the water doesn't come in. So they're not thinking about moving to a safer location. So that conversation needs to happen. And then the question is, but who gets access to the housing there? I mean, does it mean we give up our right to this place? So it's complex. And then the question then is, how do the stakeholders get involved and how are they prioritized? And the criteria around that, because that's something that we struggle with really big here. And our example, one of the issues here is the emphasis is on the money rather than public good. So there's a tension between that, because there's different players, the developers, the people who own land, the people who make money, etc., etc. So there's a lot of discussion and judgments to be made.
That's right. And I think that's why we discuss about understanding the resources in different different regions. That will help us to think about ways to develop each region, right? And this is what government is still trying to do, is that planning is not an easy work.
No, no, complex.
Now, can I just ask you, Joao, what's your opinion on the importance of getting democratic municipal government elected in Dili? It seems to me that one of the problems they had in Akusi, I think, was that they had all this planning before they had a democratically elected government. They had all this money and they were doing all sorts of things, and there wasn't a way of actually testing it out with the people's views. And that in most countries, the way this is done is by having an elected government, and if people do the wrong thing, they will lose their seats. But it seems to me that elected government's getting further and further away in Timor rather than closer. And what's your view on this? Do you think it's urgent or what?
Well, it is unfortunate that people who are directly elected by the people or the president and the Sefi Suku.
Exactly, the Sefi Suku. And
yes, that's right. Yes, that's true.
And a bit of background on that, because I was involved in that local government discussion it started off at Baucau about 2003-04. And that was, and so the discussion has been on the table for more than a decade. But
it has.
Resolution about the status of an additional local government and the status of the Sefi Sukos has never been resolved.
There is now discussions about what we call decentralization. Especially with the current prime minister. He is big on giving some sort of power to the local government to actually plan, not just as administrative power, but actually over their fiscal policy, the monetary policy, how they use they use their money and all that. But there is also a concern, and I think this concern is shared by Lau Hamutu, that maybe resources in the district, in the municipality, are not yet ready to, let's say, have their own budget and to implement that for their needs. And who will oversee how the implementation of these activities in the municipalities? What they call is distribution of corruption to within the different level of government.
Oh dear.
Look, it's a difficult one because, and I mean, it's, you know, Timor isn't the only place dealing with this issue about, you know, mates deals and corruption and whatever. But there's also a clash between the, if you like, the corporatized systematic process and the kinship and clan process, and there's still a real clash there, because arguably the local people know best about what the local people are looking for and need and want, mainly through Shefi de Sucos, whereas the administrative area in the municipality with the, you know, which was the old districts and administration, is an entirely different process. So getting those processes to work harmoniously together for good outcomes is also an interesting challenge. But it can be done. It's not impossible to do.
Yeah, it can be done. We just need to find ways that how this could be best implemented. And I think the whole idea was to choose 2 or 3 municipalities as a pilot to implement this decentralization process. But so far it has not been realized because, you know, our political situation is not ideal at the moment. So plus all this COVID pandemic, plus natural disaster, we are not in an ideal situation right now.
Yeah.
Now, can I ask you whether the Dili District Administration employs anyone trained in urban planning? Do they have town planners? Do they have people who are actually looking at what to do with every piece of land in the city? And is there any course in urban planning in Timor?
There is this tension between the how do you say municipal administrators plus all these ministers, because there is no clear competency jurisdiction of who should do what, especially in the capital, because in the end it is a capital of the country, but it is also a municipality. Dili, so it's a little bit fuzzy who should do what. And I think this is where we have problem. Let's say developing a tourism spot, for example, Christroe, who should do that? Should it be local authority or should it be Ministry of Tourism? I think this is where there is no clear line, and it creates a little bit of tension. Unless there is a fine line between that clear, and then who should organize what, then I think we could move from there.
I mean, that for example would be a partnership between the local government, whatever shape
That's
that
right.
and the central government, and they should work together on that, because there's about the marketing and the business end of it, which is the tourism, and then there's the planning to make that work properly and sustainably. So yeah, partnership.
I mean, of course, this partnership is important, but hello.
Yes. Hello? Keep going. Yes, we can hear you. I can.
Yes, but but this partnership should be built based on some sort of not equal power, but equal opportunity to actually have a significant decision in terms of how this space should be developed.
Collaborative.
Otherwise,
yes,
it's going to be.
Yeah,
and I think you also have a problem with the local residents of who the actual partners are. If the partners are the Dili District Administration, they've been appointed by the government of the day anyway. They're not elected, so they're not really a separate body representing the people. So how do you find who the actual partners are? look, I lived in Canberra before Canberra had local government. There's always a big problem with capital cities running their own local government. Look, that Canberra had a huge fight about getting a little becoming equivalent of a state, actually, and they had a little parliament they called the toy parliament when I lived there, and it had no powers at all, but it was very symbolic, you know. It was all the local people who wanted to be local, but it is a problem. But it can be, as you say, Moira, it can be done if you think carefully through the issues. What are the things that are clearly municipal roles, like rubbish collection, and in some cities, electricity distribution is a local thing. The national government wouldn't be involved in electricity distribution in many countries. It's the states or the local government.
Hello, sorry, my internet is acting up.
Oh, yes, sorry, we missed you for a while. But there's also got to be a debate about how centralised everything should be, including electricity generation. Do you really need to generate the electricity for the whole country in Hera and send it around the whole country with very expensive poles and wires, when now in most countries they're decentralising electricity generation and generating it closer to where it's used, because most of it's renewable. Now, is that debate going on about how centralised energy and some other things should be? Joao, can you hear me? Does that debate go on in the planning ministry?
Yeah.
Because there's another topic we may have a discussion on, a Zoom discussion on, if we get it to work, is this proposal of the Timor Gap has proposed they have appointed already a group to look into the possibility of transferring the electricity generation from diesel to gas.
Yeah.
This is the same debate that's going on in Australia.
Yes, and
at the same time.
That's a very complex debate, because I mean, leave all the players aside and the various politics about it, but I mean, for us it's a transition, because we've had that national grid, well, state-based, but basically they've linked it up eventually.
Yes.
Whereas in countries where, you know, the whole idea of having a national grid, if you like, is they still haven't completed the full lot. Well, then why would you do it when there's other alternatives that you need to develop and work on? So they've got a better opportunity to start the new system, because they don't necessarily have to transition from the old system. So they're in a different context. It's a bit like Wi-Fi and
I don't know whether Timor is, because they've already got a grid that covers a large, substantial part of the country. And when Avelino Coyo was Secretary of State for Energy Policy and was promoting renewables, he was only allowed to do it in those places beyond the grid. And they were pretty remote places.
And I wonder whose interests were being served there.
That's right. You see, there's already Timor rushed ahead and made a national grid almost. But so I think the debate's not that different.
Yeah, there was that in China. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
The heavy oil, that's right, which is not heavy oil anymore, but it's diesel, but it's still a centralised.
Yeah.
And so this worries me. And you see, this is again one of those things I think that could be looked at in the follow-up to the floods, because in the floods a lot of people lost electricity. I think some may have been.
Yeah, and that's the interesting point, I think, really, is that to try and influence the central government about these issues, I mean, it should happen, but that's a lot more complex and quite a different process to having local communities empowered and informed in order to advocate for their communities. And that's where arguably, I mean, in our area, it's the local communities advocating to, and the local councillors who are elected advocating on behalf of their people. That's where the pressure comes in part of those campaigns, and that can be multifaceted. So, for instance, in the idea of developing the tourism around Christorray and so on in that area, I mean, there's a whole pile of different locals there with different kinds of interests and businesses and God knows what. It's very mixed. You could have local precinct groups, as we call them here, where they're basically local people who come together, get briefed, get informed, do some research, and get an allowance to work on this on behalf of their community on the particular project, and advocate to the central government or to the administration. So it's actually built in as part of the development process, if you like.
Good. Now, Joao, we unfortunately lost you for a while there. Are you back? Can you hear us?
Yes, I am back, but I hope so. My internet is a little bit acting up right now.
Well, you've turned off your camera. You've turned off your camera, but that's all
right.
right. I think I was asking a question, I think just as you dropped out, about whether or not the government is having any or not, or anyone in the planning ministry is having discussions about in the debate about whether to replace diesel with gas, whether there's discussion about whether or not Timor needs such a centralized electricity generation system and you know, costly poles and wires transporting electricity long distances away from where it's generated for a small population.
That is a very good question, and I think it's a very sensitive one. There is a discussion about there is a discussion about potential of other renewable energy resources. But imagine this: you know, government has spent billions of dollars to build this all this investment, and of course it's linking to SDP, petroleum industry in the south coast and all that, right? So this is a multi-billion national program, and I think that moving away from that in sort of short term, when there is no return for this investment, and that we are having now dependence on heavy oil. And I think it's a little bit, let's say politically, it's not a best choice right now. But of course, technically, there is a discussion. There is discussion that at least identify the potential. Okay, now the government is also thinking about building dam in Laku and Glenu, right? And trying to, and whether or not there is a potential for hydropower. And this kind of studies try to use the renewable energy sources for localized activities, depending on how much capacity it could afford, right? Generated from such sources.
Yeah, I can see your point there. I can see that major investment and what's been the return on the investment type of discussion and argument. And I mean, arguably a better approach, or possibly one that might get more traction, is to, as you say, look at those areas that currently don't have electricity and look at alternatives for them. And what popped into my head was a visit when I was in Rajasthan in India couple of years ago now, going out, visiting various places. And Rajasthan is it's a farming area, like it's a lot of green right next to the Punjab, but it's also got a desert area, which didn't have any electricity grid in it. And what they did was put in solar panels and wind turbines. And it gave every house, and you know, they had cattle and machinery for, you know, doing bits and bobs, their jobs, and it provided them with the power they needed. But it also got a lot of attention because it was such a good result. So that
well, you know, most of the small island states in the Pacific are now moving to more than 50% renewable, and Tuvalu and Kiribati, I think, are 100%.
Yep.
You know, because it is so easy and cheap.
Correct.
And Joao, when you said you thought that they would be waiting to try and get some return on the investment, do they seriously believe they're going to get return on the investment now that the price of oil is going down so fast? Do you know?
That's right. And I think, Mana, what should be the principal idea is that how to transition from, let's say, even now, we only use 30% of the capacity of our energy. That has
true,
been,
yes.
Yeah.
That's
They're
right.
generating too much.
That's right. Even then, we are not effective. Many people still don't have the access to the
Still
So the best way to do it is that how there should be a strategy to transition from at least certain proportion of the energy should be based on renewable resources. I think that's yeah.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I think that could be.
Yeah.
Anyone else got any comments on this? Would Rob or Therese or Gawain or Mark or Noel like to say anything? Leo, yes. Because I'll just mention Leo and I are involved in, have been involved in working on the reform of the secondary school curriculum. We want to bring this renewable energy being one of the SDGs. We want to bring some of the skills of it into the school curriculum. Leo, you can say something.
Yeah,
yes.
I think renewable energy is really important. On the electricity PowerPoint in Hera. For instance, you know, when some people stay in Atauru, not in the but in the other side, they use solar panel as alternative energy for them, and that's working very well, I think. Yeah. So they don't need to buy fuel every day or every week, but they it is enough for them in order to use for that. And I was thinking that in other part, the small community, they can use some type of renewable energy, and it's also important that to introduce to the people, not because one day what Mount John said, that maybe the heavy or using the we have now dependency on electricity, maybe one day because it is consume much energy and also spend a lot of money for that. So maybe we can also introduce the other alternative like biogas systems that the people can use for cooking. Yeah, we have resources in our country, but the problem is to introduce and also to expand to the people so that they can use by themselves. So mostly for the people that they are not accessing the electricity from the central power in Hera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did, I'm going back now, oh God, nearly 10 years, but we did take on that idea. Again, it originated in India, where you basically had solar panels for lighting and other basic needs in local schools and in local communities. So like, doing your homework in the evening type of thing or something like that. And we did the training, so and it was mainly women who got trained to do it, but the problem was keeping the continuity and keeping the maintenance up once the person passed away or something changed, and then it's tended to fall apart. So that sustainability part was the most challenging to keep together.
Yes.
Which needs to be built into any of those projects.
Well, this is the idea of having it taught in the secondary schools, so that all secondary school graduates know how to fix up the solar panels in their house or do basic maintenance. That those people were trained by ATA to do that, but usually the people who got trained to maintain it, went off to the city because they got a better job. So the same with the water supply and sanitation. They train people to fix pumps, and then they get a job, and the pumps break down because the people trained to fix them are no longer living in the village. And yet the knowledge is not rocket science, it's high school science, but sadly not taught. That's the sad thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so that needs to be built in,
Now, anyone else got any comments or questions to Joao?
Hi, Zhao. It's my name's Gowan Sharp. I just wondered, like, where are we with the terms of advocacy for things like, I don't know, solar panel rebates, or just in terms of getting some of these catalytic sustainability projects happening. I just wondered if you could speak to that for any time.
Rob, do you want to say something?
Oh yeah, there he is. Sort of.
Sorry, your voice is not clear on this side, so I cannot hear you clearly.
Okay.
It's kind of cut off.
Just when you speak, put your face near your microphone when you speak.
Oh, sure. I just wondered what sort of initiatives or programs are happening at the moment or being advocated for, sort of at the policy level, maybe incentives for solar panel rebates or any such thing like that. Or I just wondered what is happening at the moment in terms of getting some of these sustainability renewable energy sources happening.
Okay. So right now, the Ministry of Public Works is doing studies on the surface water in Railaco and Glenu, and to see whether or not there is a potential for dam and hydropower. Right, and also many discussions related to places where you have potential for wind energy and some sort of stuff. But as I discussed, the biggest question is whether or not the future of development of Timor-Leste is still depending on the oil and gas, or should it be based on the more productive sectors? Let's talk about agriculture. Let's talk about tourism. Because if oil and gas still the major part in this future development, then I think it's a little bit more difficult to discuss about renewable energy, because that's a very pretty much linked to how the government views the potential for renewable energy. And I think that over the last 10 years or so, investment on this energy sector, especially this heavy, has been huge, right? It's in, we talk about billions, and what I talk about the return of investment is that how do we justify having spent all those money without seeing how those investment could be is worthwhile. So far, even the returns from our use of electricity cannot cover our operational costs, and that is so it means that we still get a lot of subsidies from the government. And I think many of you are aware that now EDTL is no longer is now a public enterprise. It's like Timor Gap. So we hope to see changes in terms of the way it operates, because now as a public enterprise, it should be based on some sort of a business model where it start to generate revenues for the country. But let's see. It is pretty much new, I think, for a few months. So let's see how they come up with some sort of a business concept, business case in the coming months.
Yeah.
But
See, those
it
business
strikes me as a bit odd that the electricity generation is not using any of Timor's own oil or gas. It's completely imported. So how you can expect to make a profit on oil and gas that is very costly to import? I'm having difficulty to understand.
It is,
and in fact, you could, if Timor Gap could become a general energy organisation and get into renewables as well, it would have a better chance of making a profit.
you know, when I saw, I hope that Florentino joins the discussion, but I haven't seen his.
No, he did register. Yes, that's right, and we must try and get him along sometime. Now he's chair of the.
He'll be interesting. He's chair of ANP, not Timor Gap. The
oh yes,
the authority, and I think they could give us better information on what is the directions of development in terms of in the oil sector, and that, because whether we like it or not, development in this country is still driven by oil and gas. And that's why the use of money to develop more productive sectors will be crucial. In terms of the country's goal to move away from oil-dependent economy, and I think that is crucial. And I have written many articles on this, especially changing the mindset on the way the government sets state budget.
Right, that would be very interesting to see some of those. I don't
because the ceiling of the budget usually set based on when the petroleum fund is going to last. So let's say the Ministry of Finance will come up with some sort of a annual budget ceiling. If you take, let's say, 2 billion, then the petroleum fund will last, let's say, by 2040. Which I think is not getting the country away from the dependency on the oil and gas money, but also it doesn't help the country to actually develop the productive sectors. Because if we are really serious about developing the productive sectors, then we need to set target. Let's say in the next 5-10 years, what do we want agriculture sector to contribute to the economy? How much should it be? should it generate, and that should determine what resources we need, how much money we need, and that what determines how much money should be allocated to this sector for every year. And of course, we have to control, evaluate, assess this progress rigorously every year. Otherwise, we can never move away. We can never move away from oil.
Yeah, and it's a very contested area, not just in Timor, but globally, you know, whether it's developed or developing countries. And one of the challenging things about technical, you know, business reports, but technical reports too, is that the assumptions that are put into it, the methodology that's used, can get you almost any of the answers you want, if you like. And that's one of the challenges, to be able to rigorously assess what the assumptions and the methodologies are and how particular conclusions were arrived at. So that's another challenge. And that's one of the things that some of the people in our group have taken on in terms of our government, state government I'm talking about now, processes. But it's not a, you need a group, and it does take time.
Yeah. I think also the weakness of many of technical people in this country is that we are not courageous enough to come up with honest assessment of our situation from technical perspective, that what is the cost and actual cost and benefit of certain undertakings. And somehow we have been led to believe that the fantasy of reality based on our oil, and we think that our oil is infinite and our money is limitless, and this is why all these major infrastructures such as highways, timber ports, which if you assess in some sort of feasibility studies by individual project, it's not sustainable. It's not feasible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and I mean, going back to the days when the Petroleum Fund was actually first set up, when Timor actually had less coming into it because of the Australians having such a big wad of it. The idea of the Petroleum Fund was that it would keep going even after the oil had run out, if it was properly invested.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, if you didn't take more than the sustainable percentage, the Petroleum Fund would go on, you know, for a century or so after the oil had run out. It's not dependent on there still being oil coming out, so long as it was properly invested. And I don't know whether that view is still held anymore. Do people still believe that? Or is it now that the idea is to use up the Petroleum Fund in a few years, or what?
Yeah.
Do you know, Siobhan?
That is the ideal situation, right? To take a proportion from the Petroleum Fund meeting the sustainable 3% threshold, right? But unfortunately, it's right. Not. We are not in an ideal world where it's all going well for us. But of course, 3% somehow is viewed as not sufficient to achieve targets we set in the strategic development plan.
Yeah,
and of course, with all this, the need to manage different expectations, different interests, and maintaining political stability, it's a costly one. And we are not sure how to now minimize the, how do you say, the cost for expanding our the size of the government. because it's pretty for a small country, 1 million people, to have so many ministers and vice ministers. I cannot. It's hard to fund them.
Yeah.
And parliamentarians that don't represent a local area. That to me is a big weakness of the Constitution. The parliamentarians don't have a local electorate. No, nobody's a local member.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we in the end, it's not easy. It's not easy. The transition. Most of the leaders were from the guerrilla fighters, the freedom fighters came out, and they have to transition towards how it is to run the country, and it's not easy.
No.
But of course,
Yeah.
changing it needs a different generation to transform all this from some sort of a political mindset to technical mindset in terms of developing the countries. It's a little bit challenging for this country.
Yeah. That's a difficult transition to make.
Well, can I just say something about that? Because I think one of the things I find a bit problematic about Timorese politics is, and I heard it this morning also, that this separation between technical and political, technical and policy, and somebody said, I think in relation to the business with Shanana outside the Veracruz place, that somebody said, oh, we gave a technical decision, but somebody else has got to make a political decision. And this habit of separating out political and policy, technical and policy decisions, I think is a big problem. And again, I can see where it comes from. It comes from the education system. It comes from people who are trained either in science or social science, but not both. Almost nobody covers those two areas. People in the medical field don't know about health policy, with one or two exceptions like Dr. Rui, and people in engineering don't know anything about road policy. And I'm sad to say probably don't know much about drainage either, because they haven't had much practical work in the engineering school. So there's a whole lot of things that the gap between that concept of somebody being either a technician or a policy person is, I think, a bit dangerous. I don't know what anyone else got any views on this.
And you know what? Believe me, it's not just Timor. I mean, we've got it in spades over here. And so we've done pretty well.
Australia has its own version of it. It's not quite the same way, but I agree. It's hard at the national level in Australia to find somebody who's got their head around both the science and the economics of global warming. That's why, what's his name? The one person who can do it is the one who always does it.
Yeah.
What's his name?
And it's exactly. But the politics, it's like the politics are played, and I mean, you can see it around election time. So it's a kind of a cultural thing in terms of politics and the gaining and maintaining of power. So there's that element of it as well. Who's in charge here type of thing, which is pretty juvenile really. But anyways, I've said enough about that.
Yeah, well, we've got some pretty awful things happening in Australia at the moment too. I don't know whether it's a global phenomenon, but a lot of countries are facing a bit of a similar, of politics meaning purely and simply something that's popular. And you dare not do anything that wouldn't be popular in case you lose votes, even if you know it's
That's
wrong.
right.
So that is a big trap of democracy.
That's right. That's right. So this is what I'm saying. Let's say, I mean, right
But I mean, I think it's good that you've got such faith in the younger generation. And hopefully. Now, I thought we might sort of move on to a little bit of consideration about food, because we have some people here who do know a bit about it. And I wondered also whether, from your position in the Ministry of Planning, whether you've seen any indications about any things people may be planning to do differently. My worry, I'll just tell you what, I have two worries in relation to agriculture and food production. One is there doesn't seem to be a plan for moving subsistence farmers into the small and medium enterprise sector. You know, subsistence farmers grow food, exchange it, eat it, did survive well for a long time. What is their motivation to produce a surplus and to become small and medium enterprise members? And what is the plan for educating them in the skills they need in order to do that? Because it's my view from reading Timorese history, the Indonesian occupation de-skilled farming. The Indonesian occupation had a thing called KUD. They brought along tools and seeds and said to farmers, grow this and we'll come back and buy it from you, and took away the need for skill and decision making and planning and a lot of things that farmers really need, because farming should be a skilled occupation. And of course, this was in the pre-computer era, so farmers didn't use computers then. But it worries me that this lowered the status of farming, and now nobody who finishes high school, nobody who finishes primary school wants to be a farmer. I mean, this is a generalization. There are a few that do, and I think the few that do are not looked after. They're not encouraged. They're not found out to and given opportunities to be a farmer. And the people who go into the secondary agricultural schools mainly go there because they want to get into the agriculture faculty at UNTL and repeat all their studies again, you know, repeat doing the same agricultural science, really, not farming. So that you've got all these people with degrees in agriculture who never grow anything. And one of the lecturers at UNTL who lectures in animal science said to me, he said, Helen, I very much regret that of the 900 or so students I've taught, not one of them works in the industry or helps their family who have chickens or pigs. The ones that have a job, if they're not in the Ministry of Agriculture, a few of them get into the Ministry of Agriculture. If they're not in the Ministry of Agriculture, they're teachers. They get jobs as a secondary biology teacher. Yeah. And actually, some of them are quite good because they've got a more broad education than the ones from the physics faculty or the biology faculty. So, you know, there's not a clear plan. What is the purpose and aim of agricultural education? I don't know. Some of you with more background in agriculture here might like to say something. Because this is what Leo and I are thinking about in our reform of the secondary school curriculum, you see, because there are secondary agricultural schools which a lot of money has been put into, and they could be a very valuable resource, but at the moment they're missing out on the sort of student that really they want to be attracting, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, Mana Helen, I think from the government side, I think there is a thinking that you only need the hardware to actually improve the productivity of agriculture sector. You don't need the soft skills. This is one of the problems.
I know there was one of the ministers who believed that. Yes, that's right.
There is a mindset that getting real job means office job.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. A salary.
I'm aware of
This is
this.
the mindset.
Yeah.
That's right. And I also think that somehow we need to change the way we think about agriculture, because in Timor it's about
Yes.
just simply to sustain oneself, but without the opportunity to improve their lives. I think this is where we have a lot of challenge. I think if somehow we can manage to make agriculture as a sector that can transform their lives, farmers' lives, I think it has an opportunity to grow here in this country.
That's right. I mean, you've got to have a system where if somebody completes an agricultural secondary school course, they can be expected to become a highly skilled expert farmer, be buying their own car in a couple of years, building their house, have a computer, use, you know, be a member of a cooperative, and really have a lot of say over what they're doing. And this, there doesn't seem to be any pathway into this for anyone who may wish to do it at the moment.
But there seems to be, from what I understand because up around Maliana, Bobanaro, in that area, that's an agricultural area.
There's an agricultural college there, a government one.
Correct, that's right. I've been there.
Secondary school,
yes.
I've been to it, yes.
One of the things that's happening or has happened, and it was, again, it's about 10 years ago when it started, and it's not unusual, it's happened globally, is you get the companies that come in and say, sign up with us, we'll give you the seeds and the fertilizers, and in other words, we'll industrialize your farming. It began after the Second World War. I mean, you know, I come from a similar background in terms of a subsistence culture and agrarian stuff. And then, but the problem there is that then people, you don't have control over your own seeds, and you don't have control over the fertilizer, and there's longer term effects of fertilizer on soil. So there's a complex area there. And I remember at the time, the discussion up at Bobanaro and over to Kailako, or in all that area, there was a massive community discussion about the farmers who were going to sign up and the farmers who wouldn't sign up. Because once you sign up, you're basically, you have no choice but to stay with those, unless you make the big transition and go back to a more sustainable type of farming approach. So there's a whole pile of other players in the marketplace that are coming in to exploit, and whether they're people from Indonesia with ideas or people from the big agriculture or who they are, they come in with different ideas that they basically sell a promise to the locals. So I think that critique too of what farming is and what's sustainable over the longer term is important to add into the curriculum.
That's right. I agree.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of skills that are needed to develop the rural areas, like solar panels, you know, generation of renewable energy, building, even sort of local government skills, things that are needed by people in the rural areas to develop the rural areas, but they're not taught anywhere, even in the agricultural secondary schools, general secondary schools. The building courses, the vocational building courses are for people who will be employed by a foreign investor. They don't help the person build their own house. They're not, there's not even general carpentry courses in schools, or dressmaking courses, or courses in doing local skills, or hairdressing courses, where people could get livelihood, and yet they're not taught for some strange reason. I don't know.
Generally, I think from my experience of working in the technical education area in Australia, and it's not that different to other countries, is because there's a bit of a one size fits all. And the assumption is in that curriculum is that you're going into industry. In other words, you're going to be an employer. And I think the syllabus and things that have been imported work on that basis, if you like.
I think I think that's similar to Timor when someone is graduated from the agricultural school is at the end is not going back to the field again in order to grow the food, but they are looking for the other job that it's it's easier to get money. So
Correct.
I think we can consider that is an instant job because people tend to get the in easier way to get the money in other instead of they are working in the garden or doing something. But in my point of view, it is difficult now because since it's almost 2 decades, but we still not and I mean that the agriculture policy is still the same. We still don't know where to go. That's the problem. So I think that even we have the national strategy plan that's we adopt like a green revolution as one of the framework. But I think that is that the problem happening in other countries like India, that until now they face a big problem in there. But we cannot use those the policy in order to implement in Timor. For instance, we are now everybody is mindset is market orientation or profit orientation. That is true. We can do that one day, but how can that we already ignore some issues that are really important? For instance, nutrition issue. Nobody talk about nutritionist, but people are talking about money. How they get the money to come. That is the problem. So I think it's important now is to invest in the small farming, but it's really important like how people sustain their life, because and then when we get the surplus, we can going to the not going to the international market, but maybe at least in the domestic market, community market. It's first in order to sustain ourselves first in terms of nutrition, and also to sell to get some money, but not the whole things that are money oriented or market orientation, and everybody will lose. For instance, it is now happen what happened like the company that now they invest. I saw some companies here, they are saying that, okay, one village, one product. That does not make sense because we are losing other diversity in Timor-Leste. So we are not, developing in the sustainable way. What you think? So I think that's not the something that we need to provide something good in for the future generation. For my point of view, it is important now. We are now need to invest in the sustainable way of agriculture. For instance, maybe applying permaculture activities or anything, or maybe or home gardening. So we can also activate like a urban agriculture, urban farming, school gardening, or that also maybe I think when Mount John is also talking about the urban planning. So maybe community garden is also part of the gardening or part of the planning, because that it is also something that not working by itself, but also integrate with others. For instance, in terms of using the rubbish management, how to collect the organic the rubbish in order to make the compost, or in order to make reuse the other things. It's really important that this integrate to each other. So we really need to think about this. We really need to make a good plan in order to get success on this. Otherwise, we always depend on the food. Every year we import food to our country, but it's only create dependency. All the seeds coming from other country. Even our government introduced some seeds, but it tend to be like a patent seeds that maybe one day the company will take over all of this. And how about the right to get the seeds?
Exactly.
So we need to think about all of this, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the big controversy in up in Papanaro, was people making an informed decision so they understood what they were buying into, or if
Yeah.
they didn't want to. So some farmers did stay out, and I'm still in contact with some of the farmers who stayed out, and now they can see the benefits of not going into it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I think it is really crucial that all the, especially for the government to think about this, not only thinking about the market orientation or between, especially using the high tech technology, for instance, using the tractors. Now I don't know that all the tractor situation in Timor-Leste. They provide all tractors to the farmers, but after that the farmers don't know how to use that. Then after that, who is going to manage or to maintain the tractors when even the wheels, we cannot fixing the wheels of the tractors.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that and also I think there is no proper policy about the about the seeds, improving the seeds in Timor-Leste, and also investigations, to how to make for instance the seed bank. We need to collect all the local seeds in Timor in order to put in one seed bank. It's as a genetic resource for Timor-Leste as well, but nobody's willing to do that. And even the government is only pay attention on something, to increase the production, but they don't know how to increase that. That's a problem. Yeah.
And that comes back to that thing about industrialized farming and how sustainable that is for local communities, because ultimately it's not. And there are alternatives that are now, I mean, they were there in the past, but they're now taking on. So organizations like Permatil, and they used to, I mean, AGO used to work with the Ministry of Education and all of that, but somehow it got cut out or put aside. But it's that
because
kind of sustainability.
People don't like the small solution. They need very fast solution.
Yeah.
They need food in front of the people, not through the process. That's the problem. That's one of the mentality that we need to change. Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't think.
Well, now it's
all of this through education system. So I think that's why the agriculture in the secondary school, that's really important to develop in Timor-Leste. But it also depends on the political will, because somehow, people will think that agriculture is not really important. They tend to get, it's to find the easier way in order to sustain life. But if we are thinking about the sustainable living, sustainable life of the people in Timor-Leste, we should think about this. Agriculture is the most important one to develop. Yeah.
Like, looks as if we've lost Joao, I think. But anyway, we welcome 2 more people into the group, and one of them's dropped out already, I think, Jenny. But Deborah, you're here. Yes. Have you heard much of the discussion? Anything you would like to add or comment? Unmute yourself. Oh, hang on. I can unmute you here, I think.
Oh, I was muted. Sorry. the phrase of the year. You're on mute. No, I was just saying that it was good to hear the perspectives. I mean, some of you will know in terms of our work with children that we find various sort of effects on child nutrition from different farming practices, but it's not simple by any means.
Oh, yeah.
The relationships are not simple.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a complex web, yeah.
And which areas are you mostly doing your research in, Deborah? I forget. Which districts, which parts of Timor?
it's been so long now. It's now up in Osu, in Vikeke district and down in Natobora. So 2 different agroecological
Oh.
zones. So
Yeah.
No. And Gawain, you've been involved in some agricultural work. Do you want to say something about what you've been doing in the past, even though it might be a while ago? We haven't seen you in Timor for a while, have we?
Indeed, and it's good to see some familiar faces here, yourself and Rob and a couple others I recognise. Yeah, it was 9 years ago. We were working on a project. We were using SRI, and I was there for a year. And Rob knows something about this project as well. But what was really interesting was using even like an agroecological process like SRI. You would think, oh, it would just take off, but such a thing doesn't just take off. It really needs a lot of incentive around that, and it's the same sort of thing that happened. So anyway, once I was there for the whole process was about a year and a half. I went and had a look at similar cooperatives that were up and running in Indonesia. One was called Simpatika. And it was really awesome to see that these, the way they had divided the land, that way each of these cooperative members sort of like looked after their lots and was involved in the cooperative, and the sort of like the synergies and the virtuous circles, if you like, really caused a lot of prosperity. So these little islands of success, they exist in the world. And then following that place, I went to Cambodia, and I had a good look at a place called SEDAC, and it was industrial level, but also but sustainable. It was like they were still using the system of rice intensification. They were still using agroecological methods. They sort of like used finance.
Can you get a bit closer to your microphone? Your sound.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I can you hear me okay now, Helen? I hope this is a little bit better. I hope it's a little bit better. But we visited after Timor. Went to.
Now I can. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Oh.
We went to places like Cambodia, and they have they had a market that was organized, and it was a huge incentive to get these agroecological methods up and running. We're still stuck with a capitalist world, for want of a better situation, if you like, or not. But so incentivizing that was really critical to how a system like SRI spread, and it was sort of like hooking up a market, hooking up farmers, hooking up the whole process. Like there's lots of little steps, and I think and that's just talking about one type of method, and I think the same would hold true for certain other incentivizing other renewable energy methods, or other agroecological processes as well. That the whole incentive around that really needs to come back to, is it going to impede the livelihood of the farmer, who's quite often involved in subsistence farming, or not? And I just can't help but reflect that, like if you look back in, like, I don't know, the United Kingdom at the beginning of their industrial revolution, it started in agroecology, it started in agriculture, and it started with, enhanced methods of production and causing a surplus and the rise of a middle class out of that from a feudal system. And that was, and I sort of think, oh, well, it's sort of like almost like a rite of passage that eventually you need to really incentivize the farmers, and you really need to make a livelihood attractive to being a farmer. I mean, I'm originally from New Zealand, and being a farmer in New Zealand's a great occupation. It's but there's so much that's hooked up around that, and they're all involved in a cooperative, and there's places like that in Australia where I am as well, and it's just good to see that it can work, but it's a long journey. And I think it's not just having the idea, but the sort of like the social aspect and the relationships that are involved in selling that and getting consensus around that and building trust around that. It's a painstaking process, and if people can pull it off in Timor, well, all power to them, and God bless them. I reckon that'll be fantastic. But yeah, that's my lot.
And absolutely agree with you that that co-op movement, if you like. I mean, if the government, and of course the government of Dili still has the biggest influence, if you like, but if they could embrace that concept of the co-op movement and support its development, that would be a massive step.
Yeah.
And it would be really good.
They seem to be dropping out regularly now.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, well, you know, getting cooperatives working in a functional method, you know, in a functional way, with you know, with access to markets that work. The two really good cases I saw, Simpatica was its name in Indonesia, and that was set up by Norman Uphoff from Cornell when they were spreading SRI to the countries, and it really took off. But honestly, getting even that level of sort of like workability for this relatively small group of farmers was a huge task. But these models, they exist, and they're worth referencing, and they can be drawn on, because you know, if you compare the cooperative farmers that were using agricultural sustainable methods who had access to markets, compared to the average farmer that was like to their left or to their right in the same area, the difference is stark. One's basically in the third world still, and the other one's driving around with a ute and can send their kid to college. It's quite different. So there's all sorts of turn-on effects, and you know, the impact of getting something like that right, and the sort of virtuous circles that go with that is a real testament to people's commitment. And yeah, and the one in Cambodia would just blow your mind. It's just CEDAK, CEDAK, and it's I'll put it here on. Have a look at these guys, and they're amazing, and they're a good reference. And Oxfam referenced them, who helped get the funding for the project in Timor when I was there. But unfortunately, the program in Timor, it petered out. Probably wasn't feasible at the time. And it needed a lot more kind of work, but it's just something I haven't been able to let go of yet. And you know, I think you know, people fortunately like Rob and Co that are still there battling away, and Helen, it's great to see people hanging in there, because it's such a it's a big commitment, and a lot you have to share and commit to.
Larry, did you say you put that link into the chat?
Yeah, well, I just put the name CEDAK, but I'll get the link links for those things if you like, and I'll put those in. Just they're just good references. Just a couple of ones. I did my master's thesis on it, and that kind of stuff, and it worked really well. And so these models exist, and there's the evidence and the data there that can be used for advocacy you know, in the right way. But, you know, notwithstanding, you know, the manner, I think, in which something like that gets presented, because it's new stuff, people have to cotton on to it. It's a lot of these things, they exist for a long time. SRI's been with us for decades now, and that's only one of the you know, the advanced sort of methods of you can do it with a little bit of fertilizer if you like, as well. But there's different these things exist, but to get the whole thing up and running and incentivized is the big problem. And since it's getting that other step, making it financially feasible as well as socially, if you're really going to call it sustainable, and that's why I think attracts us to the cooperative model. I think that's what attracts us to the cooperative model, is when the cooperative model can work, and you have like a vested self-interest by all individuals, but their vested self-interest, of course, cooperates with the whole, and it can get a return on the equity, which is kind of like at the basis of a model like that when it can work. But yeah, I'll pop these links in here if you like, and yeah, that's probably all. That's my bit. Thanks very much.
Thank you. No, that'd be wonderful. And bringing that co-op brings a whole pile of social cohesion, knowledge, cooperation. Yeah, my grandfather was involved in one. It was fantastic. Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Yeah.
Can I ask a question there? With the CEDAK, you mentioned, I think, Oxfam. How long did it actually take to get it to the point where it was self-sustaining rather than being organized and supported through a third party?
Well, you're absolutely right. It was the State Department actually what's kicked it off, you know, just and that would have started in the 80s. And then, you know, now of course they've got like giant warehouses and they're exporting organic rice as one of their income streams around the world through Lotus Foods. But they also supplied their local markets really well because of the sort of like the organization when the government came into line and started to distribute, you know, get all that kind of infrastructural stuff working. And it's a really, really good model. It's often referenced. So I'll pop it in. I'll just go and get it for you guys and stick it there. And then, but it would have taken about 15 years. Like it was that painstaking, and now you could only call it probably you know, sustainable in its own right. But it affects about 60,000 farmers, though. It's giant. And their income levels have just completely shot up. But I did some research and just had a look at what it was like for them compared to an average farmer. Because like otherwise, without a cooperative, you don't have that collective bargaining power and things like that. And that makes the world of difference. And so you end up, you know, loan sharks, whether they're about them in Cambodian or whether they're talking about them in Indonesian, they're talking about the same problem. And there seems to be the same basic resolution was just the sort of like this social cohesion and coming together seemed to overcome a lot of that the issues they had with loan sharks and rice profiteers and that kind of thing, you know. All right.
I think that kind of organized activity is something that is really missing. The example that I have is talking with people raising cattle down in the Natabora area, and there's a truck that comes down every once in a while and it'll buy a group of cattle. So what happens is people who have cattle and need cash are actually competing with each other to sell their cow, which obviously benefits the buyer rather than the sellers, whereas some sort of organization so that they were trading off who was going to be selling at any point in time might actually work a little more in their favor for pricing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's changed a lot. Natabora, well, will change a lot more, is the Ready Commodity doing a lot of marketing work with cattle down there. And they were requested to come in by the local farmers, Ready Commodity, which is a mass ACR initiative run by MAS. And one of the big success there is marketing and getting the price of the cattle because they're loss setting. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So there is some progress.
That's good to hear.
Yes, look, I think that there's more need for people to talk to each other who don't talk to each other about these. You know, one of the people I've been meaning to try and get on this Zoom discussion is the Secretary of State for Cooperatives, because there's a lot of things they do, but they don't necessarily link in with other ministries and look at what who is it that wants to set up a cooperative. You can't have a successful cooperative unless you've got members who want to do it. You know, you've got to identify the right people and the right purpose. And I think that we had a little group in Dili last year. We haven't had a meeting since the COVID, called the Solidarity Economy Group, because the solidarity economy is cooperatives, credit unions, fair trade, microfinance, community supported agriculture, parallel and alternative currencies, and all these things that require a fair bit of knowledge and training to succeed, but they don't require a lot of investment. You know, they can be owned by local people, but and again, Leo and I have been thinking of bringing these into the school curriculum under the SDG of decent work, because so many decent work jobs could be created by a little bit of organising skills, you know, organising, getting resources together with markets, together with ways of moving money around the country and things like this, and information. And if people are using computers and properly know how to tap into data, the rural area could be quite different. You know, if people had a different attitude is part of the problem, as we all know. I don't know whether people can hear me because everybody seems to be frozen here. So maybe I'm just talking to myself. I don't know.
No, we can hear, Helen.
We can
No,
hear
you're
anyone
good.
there.
Yep. But I think it's really important to
Oh,
hear
you did.
Gaywin, and
Oh.
Gaywin's message was that without increasing productivity, there's nothing to sell. And so cooperatives are great where you're buying and selling, where you're trading. I can't think of examples of cooperatives working in a barter situation, but maybe there is. Maybe it can be corrected. But unless you get a surplus, unless you can produce something to sell and you need supply the inputs and sell the outputs, there's no hope for it. Now, another bright spark occurring is the rice mill in Maliana. So Vital, I'm not sure his surname. Vital is he owns the rice mill in Maliana. There's two. There's one, Vital's the other. He heads a cooperative of 20 farmers, and they collectively buy fertilizers from Indonesia and collectively, and he buys their rice and mills it. So there are some green shoots, you might say, around. It shouldn't all be glum.
No, look, I think that's right. And the thing is to get people talking to each other, you know, who didn't know about these things and who are pleased to hear about them and who can then go off and, you know, do something with other people. Because, and also when we have people like Joao with us who actually work in the government and can take some ideas back to the government, it's useful. Because I fear, and again, in our recommendations to the Minister on the reform of the agricultural secondary schools, in our report, I said it is most important there be public discussion about this, because a lot of people are not going to take kindly to the idea that in order to be a farmer, you need, you know, senior high school qualification. You need to graduate, even though at the moment people do graduate from senior high school, agricultural secondary school, with a bloody Indemo certificate. And in fact, you don't really need a certificate to be a farmer. You can, if you've got your land, you can go and do it. Yes. And yet it's been turned into a sort of certificate getting exercise, which you use the certificate to get into university. You don't use it to start your own farm. And the knowledge, it needs to be valued, and people need to talk about it. And, you know, I did my PhD in New Caledonia and came across excellent secondary school agricultural training, farming training school, which produced very good farmers. They had to sell their first crop as part of their graduation exercise. They built up their farm over the 3 years they were in high school, and they were doing fantastic stuff. In fact, a lot of them ended up becoming politicians because New Caledonia is not independent, but they have a local government, and a lot of them became local government people because they had very good skills, literary communication skills as well. But they understand the land, and they are the sort of people who, in a sense, should be politicians because they understand how the economy works. So I'd love to see somewhere in Timor where that pathway was open to people who wanted to do it. Not everybody, but there are some people that do, and they should be sought out and found and given assistance. So, and you know, the sort of stuff Gawaine's been talking about is really excellent stuff to be putting in well, not only the agricultural secondary school, any secondary school, the subject on decent work, all about how do you organise cooperatives, what sort of cooperatives, distribution, production, all sorts of different cooperatives exist. And we have a friend, I have a friend who lives in Bali, a Canadian, who's actually into cryptocurrencies. Now, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin being the most well-known one, don't have a good name, but you can use computers to set up your own local currencies for certain purposes. And, you know, we even have an idea to do this within the schools. I think Fuiloro Agricultural School does this. Yeah. They have their own dollar and they have students earning money
Fuluru dollar.
and spending it. Leo, you can explain this. Yes.
Yeah, that's a Fuluru dollar, but it's only used in the compound, not for use for other communities.
That's
but
right.
Yeah, that's working. Yeah, so we can use the Fuluru dollar in order to buy some food within in the college, that they're mostly the Salesian college, the Salesian congregation, they prepare a canteen there. They grow food and also food, selling foods there. So we are going to use the Fuluru dollar in buy for that.
You can earn the Fuiloro dollars, or earn the Fuiloro dollars by doing some work there and spend them in the canteen at lunchtime.
Yes. But they can if we can have get the Fuluru dollar through our time that we invest, like through working in the garden or working in
Yeah.
So we can get the dollar from that, so we can use the dollar to buy our necessity, like soap or anything that we need.
It's a boarding school.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have the idea for the two classes, the class that's doing the SDG on responsible production and consumption, together with the class that's doing the subject on end hunger and malnutrition, to get together and produce a school canteen and sell meals at lunchtime, cook and sell meals at lunchtime with local currencies, where people learn about economics, food preparation, a whole lot of things in a quick way, a relatively quick way. And it's linked in with their biology, physics, chemistry, etc., health. So that's part of our plan. That's for the general secondary schools. That's not for the agriculture. Well, that would include any schools, but this is really for the general secondary schools that at the moment don't teach many skills of any kind, I'm sorry to say. Anyone else got any questions or comments? Now, I think a couple of people have dropped out, have they?
Yeah, I have to go too,
Yes.
Helen.
Well, yes, well, I think in fact, it's nearly 6 o'clock. Yes, we'll draw this to a close. Anyone like to make any last comments? Because we've been a little bit discursive. We didn't quite get to our objective of working out how to devise a new food system for Timor in the post-crisis era. But I think a lot of people have made some very valuable contributions, and this is being recorded, so I'll put it up on our LinkedIn page. So if you want to go and look at it, I'll have to go and have a look at it and see the bits that I missed where I dropped out, but I know people were still continuing the conversation. And it seems to be an indication that once we get near 6 o'clock in Dili, things begin to fade away as far as internet connectivity goes, unfortunately.
My apologies for coming in late. I'm in Perth, so I'm an hour behind you, and I had other meetings I had to be at until 4. So sorry.
Yes, look, that's right. Now, look, I don't know whether anyone's got any topic. I'm thinking of next week, actually. Leo, are you there still?
Yes,
having a discussion about our proposed curriculum, because we'll be getting up towards the meeting with the minister, and we'll bring in a lot of other education people. I think we've got another list of people that are interested in education, and we might have something with them, because we're looking for people to be on advisory groups for each of the SDGs, 15 SDGs, and academic disciplines. So we'll have the ones like physics, chemistry, history, economics, and then the SDGs, life on the land, life under the sea, restriction and consumption, end hunger and malnutrition, health and well-being, so that all of those are going to have advisory committees, largely made up of Timorese, but with a few outsiders on them if you've got expertise in an area, so that we'll set up something like the Victorian Board of Studies. I don't think it's called the Board of Studies anymore. They will have ownership of the curriculum. They will write the study design and the aims and objectives. And then people with expertise or who've already done it before, of which there are many in Timor, will write the curriculum. We will also put it on Moodle, on a learning management system for 2 years before the next election, so that the Timorese teachers can discuss it. You know, they can make suggestions, because it won't become that it's pretty clear this government is not going to adopt a new natural science and social science curriculum before the elections.
Right.
It's too controversial. Too many people are against it. So this is all just being described as preparatory work for after the elections. But we want to get as much of it up as possible. So the languages and mathematics are less controversial. Languages and mathematics may probably go ahead, and IT subjects will go ahead as fully fledged subjects. But the natural science and social science, and maybe the agricultural schools might go ahead too, because, you know, we don't see a lot of opposition from the quarters we see it for the other. You know, we don't see a lot of opposition from the Portuguese embassy towards our ideas on agricultural education, but the other ones, they desperately want to keep hold of. So this is the sad fact.
Yeah.
So
Helen, can I ask a question? I've contacted people in Maliana, both in Malibaki Amata, which is the
yes,
and the Biblioteca. Are there any particular, and yes, there are people in the community who've got experience and knowledge, not so much in the schools, but we can work with that.
Oh, look, in the libraries, you know, because one of them, we'll bring her along next week, because Margarita Mosquito is the president of the Library Association, and we are hoping a librarian training course will go ahead fairly soon, and librarians be trained to set up a proper library in every secondary school, so that project-based learning can take place eventually when the new curriculum comes in. And so there might be, we're going to be looking for good people in each, particularly district capital, municipal capital. So if you've got names of people you can recommend, that would be excellent.
Yep. Okay. Yep. No, that's good. Yes.
So,
no, either of the staff at the library would be probably good at that.
Yeah.
See you later, everyone.
And
Bye.
actually, I thought we were
Bye.
going to.
Bye.
Yes. Okay, look, thanks everybody for attending. Thanks for staying till the end. And we'll see some of you next week, perhaps, or another week. We'll.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.